Ma'am, step away from the car. Now, is that vehicle yours?
Yes, my purse and registration are on the seat. Let me grab them.
No, back up. You're not reaching in there.
So you'll cuff me without even running
Sit on the curb or you're obstructing.
Then record.
The parking lot was still warm from the sun. It was 6:14 p.m. in Phoenix, Arizona, early summer, the kind of heat that lingered even after the shadows stretched long. Angela Monroe stepped out of the grocery store, 2 bags in hand, her keys already between her fingers. She walked straight to her silver Toyota Camry, parked in the 3rd row under a light post still off. As she unlocked the door and placed the bags in the passenger seat, she heard it. Tires crunching over pavement. A voice cutting through the open air. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." She turned confused, expecting maybe someone needing help, but the tone was sharp, not a request, an order. A police cruiser angled into the lot behind her car. Officer Dan Madsen had his hand resting on his belt, eyes locked on her like she'd been caught mid-crime. Angela blinked. "I'm sorry? Is this your car, ma'am?" She paused for half a second, trying to read the situation. "Yes. I've had it for years." "What's going on?" Madsen stepped closer. "License and registration now. Step away from the door." Angela kept calm. She'd taught high school for 14 years. She knew how to de-escalate. "Officer, my license is in my purse inside the car. So is the registration. Can I get it? You said this is your car, right?" "Yes. Then you won't mind proving it." The way he said proving it wasn't neutral. It carried the weight of disbelief. As if her mere presence beside the car was suspicious. As if the act of unlocking her own door was grounds for scrutiny. Angela looked around. The lot wasn't full, but people were moving, shoppers with carts, kids getting into minivans. No one intervened. But someone had started recording. She pointed at her purse on the passenger seat. "May I get it?" Madsen shook his head. "I don't know what's in there." "Step back. Away from the vehicle." Now his tone was forceful. He radioed something she couldn't hear clearly. She took one step back, then another. Hands visible. "Officer, I'm not resisting. I just want to know why you're assuming I stole my own car." "Don't get defensive," he said quickly. "If it's your vehicle, we'll sort it out." Angela's jaw clenched. She'd had this car since 2020, still paying off the loan. Insurance in her name. Her parking permit from school was stuck on the windshield. Another voice called out from a nearby car. "That's her car, man. I've seen her here every week." Madsen ignored it. He stepped forward, hand near his holster, now not drawn but close. "I said step back." Angela moved back. Her heart beat faster, not from fear but from recognition. This wasn't confusion. It was assumption. And it had happened before. He asked again, "Do you have proof this car is yours?" "Yes, in my purse. Can I get it now?" "You're not going near that car until we verify everything," he said. "Take a seat on the curb." "I'm not sitting on the curb," she said. "I've done nothing wrong." Madsen reached for his cuffs. "Either you comply or you'll be detained for obstructing an investigation." Angela's breath caught. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was an accusation. One grounded not in action but in appearance. Phones were out now. 3 people at least were filming. She stood still, spine straight, voice steady. "You are making a mistake." Madsen's jaw clenched. His radio crackled. The situation, already unjustified, was accelerating fast. And Angela Monroe, mother, teacher, citizen, was seconds away from being placed in cuffs beside the car she owned. The moment could not explain who Angela Monroe was, so the story had to move backward. Long before the parking lot and the accusation there were early mornings and crowded classrooms, the smell of dry erase markers, and the low hum of air conditioning struggling against Arizona heat. Angela was 38 years old, born and raised in Mesa, daughter of a postal worker and a nurse, the first in her family to finish college. She taught 10th grade English at a public high school less than 6 miles from that grocery store. For 14 years, she arrived before sunrise and stayed late grading essays and calling parents who worked 2 jobs and still worried their kids were slipping through cracks. Her classroom walls were covered with student writing. Not posters, not slogans. Words written by teenagers learning how to explain themselves to a world that often misunderstood them. Angela believed language mattered, that how you spoke determined how you were treated. She taught her students to stay calm when challenged, to document, to ask questions, to know their rights even when their voices shook. She became a Teacher of the Year finalist 2 years in a row, not because she was loud or charismatic, but because students trusted her. Parents asked for her by name. Administrators leaned on her when conflict broke out. She was the person called when a student was accused unfairly, when things escalated too fast. The car in the parking lot was part of that life. A silver Toyota Camry purchased in late 2020, financed in her name, insurance in her name, registration renewed every year without fail. She still remembered signing the paperwork, the anxiety of taking on a payment alone after her divorce. The car meant stability, independence, proof she was holding things together. On the windshield was a faded parking permit from her school. On the dashboard, a stack of graded papers she planned to return the next morning. The car was ordinary, because her life was ordinary, and she had worked hard for that. Across the city, Officer Dan Madsen's story followed a different trajectory. Madsen was 42, 12 years on the force. He joined straight out of the academy, praised early for being assertive and decisive. He liked structure, rules, clear authority. Supervisors described him as proactive, sometimes too proactive. His file told a quieter story. 3 complaints over 7 years, all from civilians of color, all involving vehicle-related stops. One woman accused him of drawing conclusions before verifying ownership. Another claimed he dismissed documentation without reviewing it. Each complaint closed without discipline. Insufficient evidence. Officer acted within discretion. Internally, there were notes. Needs improvement in communication. Should slow down and verify facts before escalation. Madsen completed remedial training twice. Signed acknowledgments. Returned to patrol. He believed he was good at reading situations. That instincts kept him safe. That hesitation led to danger. The city reinforced that belief by leaving him on the street. The afternoon of the stop had been uneventful. Heat, routine calls, a report earlier about vehicle thefts in a different part of town, not nearby, not recent, but enough to color perception. When Madsen pulled into the grocery store lot and saw Angela unlocking the Camry, his mind filled in gaps faster than facts could. A woman, alone, car door open, bags not yet inside. The image fit a narrative he had accepted before. He did not see a teacher coming off a long day. He saw a question mark. And once the question formed, everything else became confirmation. Backstories do not excuse actions. They explain momentum. Angela's life had taught her to de-escalate, to speak carefully, to trust process. Madsen's career had taught him that control came from asserting authority first and justifying later. By the time they faced each other in the parking lot, both were moving on instinct. One rooted in patience and proof. The other in suspicion and speed. Neither of them planned for what would happen next. But their histories had already written the opening lines. And when the accusation left Madsen's mouth, it was not born in that moment. It had been rehearsed by years of unchecked assumptions. The conflict was no longer just about a car. It was about whose story would be believed when evidence was right there in plain sight. The pavement was still radiating heat. Angela could feel it through the soles of her shoes as she stood motionless beside her car, trying not to let her voice betray the tension in her chest. The sun had dipped low enough to cast long shadows across the parking lot. But the situation was only beginning to burn. Officer Madsen kept one hand hovering near his duty belt. The other gripped his radio mic. "Dispatch, I've got a possible 1016 in progress. Female suspect, requesting backup." Angela flinched, not from fear, but from disbelief. Did he really just call her a suspect? She took a breath. "Officer, I already told you this is my car. My name is on the registration, which is in my purse inside that seat. You're escalating something that doesn't need escalation." Madsen didn't move. "We'll see about that. You match a recent description and we've had incidents in this area." "What incidents?" she asked. He didn't answer. Around them, a small crowd had begun to form. Quiet, unsure at first. A teenager with a BMX bike stood off to the side, holding his phone up, already recording. A mother, pushing a cart full of groceries, paused, watching. 2 young men leaned against their truck, murmuring. Then a voice rang out. "That's Ms. Monroe. She's my teacher. That's her car. I've seen her get into it 100 times. It came from a boy in a school hoodie, maybe 15? Angela turned slightly. "Jordan?" "Yeah," he said, walking closer. "Don't touch her, man. That's her car. She teaches at my school." Madsen's head snapped toward the boy. "Back up, now. This is a police matter." Another voice joined in. "She's not stealing anything, bro." "That's profiling." It was one of the young men near the truck. His phone was up too, so was his friend's. Angela's breath steadied. She wasn't alone now. But that didn't mean she was safe. Madsen took a step closer. "This is your last warning. Sit down on the curb. Do not interfere with a police investigation. I'm not interfering. I'm standing beside my car, she said. Calm. Controlled. There's a difference. Madsen's jaw tightened. He didn't see a teacher anymore. He saw a challenge. The voice in his head, the one that had been shaped over years, told him authority was slipping. And once it slips, you lose control. You're not complying, he said. I'm placing you under detention until we confirm ownership. Angela didn't move. I'm not under arrest. Not yet, he replied. Phones were everywhere now. The teenager on the bike had changed angles. The two young men were narrating into their cameras. The mother with the grocery cart was calling someone, possibly the store manager. Witnesses, all of them. But Madsen's body tensed, not in caution, but in reaction. He couldn't back down. Not in front of cameras, not in front of a crowd, not after issuing commands. He reached for his cuffs. Angela backed one step away. That's unnecessary. You haven't even checked the plate. I don't need to, he said. You're obstructing. The word rang hollow. Jordan stepped forward again. You're making a mistake. That's my teacher. Madsen pointed at him. Get back or you'll be detained too. The teen froze. Angela's heart was pounding now, not from fear of harm, but from the weight of recognition. This wasn't about facts anymore. It was about ego, about perception, and she was caught between standing firm and becoming another story someone else would tell. The crowd wasn't yelling. Not yet. But the energy had changed. Everyone could feel it. The disbelief, the tension, the unspoken question. How far would this officer go to avoid being wrong? Madsen stepped forward. The cuffs were out, and with every move, every refusal to verify the obvious, he crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Angela saw the shift in his posture before the cuffs even touched her wrists. Officer Madsen wasn't listening anymore. He was performing. Not for her, not for the crowd, for the voice in his head that refused to be questioned. Turn around, he said. You're being detained for obstruction. Obstruction of what? She asked, steady. Of my investigation, he snapped. What investigation? You haven't checked the plate. You haven't verified anything. Turn around now, the crowd murmured louder. Someone said, You don't need to do that. She's not resisting. Another voice, deeper, called out, You can't detain someone without probable cause. Madsen moved faster. He grabbed Angela's wrist and spun her, one arm twisted behind her back. She winced, not from pain, but from humiliation. Her purse slipped from the passenger seat to the ground, spilling open. Wallet. School ID. Registration envelope. Her name visible in black ink, but Madsen didn't look. Angela, now face down against the trunk of her own car, kept her voice from shaking. Officer, this is excessive force. You're escalating without reason. The cuffs clicked closed, one, then the other. Phones caught every angle. The teenager on the bike zoomed in. The grocery cart mother gasped. One of the men recording muttered, Damn, she really didn't do anything. Madsen pulled Angela away from the car, ignoring the open purse, ignoring the documents that had spilled out. He walked her toward his cruiser with clipped urgency, her wrists bound, her dignity trailing behind. The walk was not long, but it was loud. Not from sound, but from silence. That kind of silence people remember. The kind that changes how a neighborhood trusts a badge. He opened the back door and guided her in. Angela lowered herself slowly, not resisting, not submitting, just surviving. The door closed behind her. Muffled voices outside. A sudden gust of wind lifted the registration from the pavement. It fluttered against the sidewalk before landing face up under a nearby cart. Inside the cruiser, Angela sat upright, breathing through her nose, shoulders back. She'd spent years teaching her students to hold composure under pressure. Now her own lesson was the only thing keeping her steady. She looked through the barred window. The sky had darkened. Sunset had given way to strip mall fluorescence. The city had moved on, but her life had just split in two. Madsen climbed into the driver's seat. Didn't say a word. Just adjusted his rearview mirror to avoid eye contact. Angela finally spoke. You still haven't run the plate, have you, Silence? You still haven't asked my name. He turned on the engine. The dashboard lit up in blue. A soft chime from the onboard computer. He keyed the radio. One adult female in custody. Suspected vehicle theft. En route to precinct. Angela laughed. A short, bitter sound, her voice low. That's not just wrong. That's libel. Still Madsen said nothing. As the cruiser pulled out of the lot, the crowd parted silently. Phones still recording. One hand held up like a slow wave capturing her face through the window. No tears. Just eyes forward. memorizing everything. And as they drove, the radio crackled with a new update. Dispatch to Unit 7A3. License plate 8XJ245 is registered to a Monroe Angela D. Valid. No flags. Angela closed her eyes. Madsen's grip tightened on the wheel. The injustice had reached its peak. Not when she was cuffed. Not when she was shoved in the car. But now, when the truth had arrived and he kept driving anyway. The station was colder than the night outside. Angela's wrists were still marked from the cuffs, faint red lines where skin had pressed against steel. She stepped out of the cruiser without help, shoulders square, jaw clenched. The drive had been silent except for one thing, the dispatch confirmation echoing again, plate valid, registered to Angela D. Monroe. Officer Madsen didn't repeat it, didn't acknowledge it. He walked her in like nothing had changed. At the processing desk, a young officer looked up. His eyes went from Angela to Madsen, then down to the screen. "What's the charge? Suspected vehicle theft?" Madsen said flatly. The young officer frowned. "This the Camry stop from earlier." "Yeah." He clicked the keyboard. "We got confirmation from DMV 20 minutes ago. It's hers. Registered, insured, clean record." Angela didn't move. She didn't speak. She waited, watched. Madsen shifted his weight. "Check again. Maybe something updated." The officer turned the screen slightly, not for Madsen, for Angela. Her name? Her VIN? Her photo? DMV verified. Valid license, no warrants, nothing outstanding. She exhaled, but not in relief. In calculation. "I want your badge number," she said quietly. The young officer pointed to the nameplate on Madsen's chest. It read Madsen D. Lieutenant Carla Reyes entered from the hallway, clipboard in hand. She paused when she saw Angela, then looked at Madsen. Her eyes narrowed. "What's going on?" "What's?" "False theft call," Madsen replied. Reyes raised an eyebrow. "That the Camry case?" "Yes. It's her car. I just read the report. You brought her in after confirmation." Madsen didn't answer. Reyes turned to Angela. "I'm Lieutenant Reyes. I'm deeply sorry this happened. Let me walk you out." Angela stared at her, then said, "Not until this is documented. I want a copy of every internal report, body cam footage, dash cam, radio logs. And I want it now. Not next week, not after someone redacts half of it." "You'll have it," Reyes said. "Tonight." She motioned to the processing officer. "Get her a file printout. Start pulling footage." Angela took one step back from the desk. Her purse, returned by another officer, hung limp at her side. Her voice came low but sharp. "Your officer detained me. Ignored legal documents. Cuffed me in public. Humiliated me. On record. In front of students." Reyes nodded. "I understand." "No," Angela said. "You don't." She turned to Madsen, but he couldn't meet her eyes. The room had shifted. The tone. The power. Madsen no longer looked like a figure of authority. He looked like a man shrinking inside a uniform he no longer controlled. Reyes walked Madsen aside, voice lowered but firm. "You're on administrative leave effective immediately. Hand over your firearm and your badge. Now." He froze. "I thought that's the problem," she cut in. "You didn't." He unbuckled his belt holster slowly, as if hoping something might interrupt this moment. Nothing did. The badge followed. The silence that hung in the room said more than any reprimand. Angela stood still. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just watched the system turn on itself for once. Reyes returned. "Ms. Monroe, I've asked the department's legal office to speak with you tonight. We're opening an internal inquiry, external too if needed." Angela nodded, her voice calm. "Then I'll see you in court." She walked out without looking back. Outside, the city hadn't changed. But the narrative had. A false accusation wasn't just undone. It was now traceable, time-stamped, preserved on video, embedded in policy failures. And Officer Madsen, he was no longer a threat, just a case file waiting for review. Angela didn't go home. Not right away. She drove to her sister's house on the east side of the city, hands still trembling on the wheel. They sat on the porch in silence for almost an hour. Then together they opened her laptop. By midnight, the videos had gone viral. The one from Jordan, her student, showed everything from the first confrontation to the moment Angela was cuffed beside her own car. He had uploaded it with the caption, "They arrested my teacher for stealing her own car. Watch this." It hit 1 million views before sunrise. News outlets picked it up by morning. Local first, then national. Headlines varied, but the theme didn't. Black teacher arrested outside grocery store for allegedly stealing her own vehicle. By noon, the school district issued a statement defending Angela. By 3 p.m., the mayor called for a review of police procedures. By 5 p.m., Angela's voicemail had over 40 messages from civil rights attorneys. She chose one firm, experienced in civil suits against municipalities. The same team that had won a similar case in Denver the year before. They filed a notice of claim within 72 hours. The case alleged wrongful detention, false arrest, civil rights violations under 42 U.S. Code 51983, and emotional distress. It demanded public accountability and compensation for reputational harm, psychological trauma, and racial discrimination. Angela returned to school the following Monday. She walked into her classroom to applause. Her students had placed flowers on her desk. Some held up their phones not to film but to show her the support they had posted. Messages, art, hashtags. But not everything was applause. City attorneys went into damage control. They released a heavily redacted statement minimizing the officer's conduct, citing ongoing investigations. Meanwhile, documents began leaking. Internal memos revealed that Madsen had at least 5 use-of-force reports previously flagged for review but never escalated. The city's Civilian Oversight Board called an emergency session. Public comment overflowed. Angela spoke last. Her voice was quiet, clear. She didn't ask for sympathy. She asked for change. "I was arrested for owning what I worked for," she said. "I wasn't loud, I wasn't hostile, but I was visible, and that was enough." The city council could no longer contain the fallout. Facing mounting pressure from advocacy groups, local media, and school organizations, they fast-tracked an external investigation. It confirmed what the footage had already shown. Madsen failed to verify basic facts, used force without cause, and escalated a situation rooted in bias. He was fired within 6 weeks, without pension, without ceremony. The lawsuit proceeded. Depositions were damning. One supervising officer admitted under oath that officers are often trained to assert control first and verify second. Another conceded that racial bias training was optional for senior officers. Angela sat through every deposition, every hearing, every motion hearing where city lawyers tried to minimize the case. Each one only made her more resolved. On the 134th day after the incident, the city offered settlement, $2.4 million. It was less than the original demand, but came with conditions: a formal written apology, disciplinary review of all officers trained under Madsen, and implementation of a mandatory bias recognition and de-escalation program for all patrol staff within 18 months. Angela agreed. The announcement was made publicly. The mayor stood at the podium. Angela stood beside her attorney, silent, dignified. She didn't need to say anything. The cameras had already done that for her. Later that evening, Angela returned to the parking lot where it all began. The same space, the same light pole. She stood next to her Camry, keys in hand. This time no one stopped her. What happened to Angela Monroe is not an anomaly, it is a warning. Under the Fourth Amendment, a police officer must have reasonable suspicion to detain an individual. Not a hunch, not a gut feeling. Specific articulable facts that a crime has occurred or is about to occur. In Angela's case, no such facts existed. Unlocking one's own vehicle in a grocery store parking lot in broad daylight with no suspicious behavior does not meet that standard. And yet the stop occurred. The handcuffs clicked. The patrol car door closed. This wasn't just about one bad decision. It was about a system that enables assumptions to override evidence. Officer Madsen ignored clear documentation. A visible school parking pass, a registered plate, a calm explanation. He escalated not because he lacked information, but because he refused to process it. That refusal was rooted in something deeper. Implicit bias, the unconscious association between race and suspicion, operates in the background of thousands of daily interactions. It turns law-abiding citizens into suspects. It redefines calm as evasive, compliance as resistance. A black woman in a Toyota becomes a question mark, a threat, a target. But bias is not the only issue. Police culture in many cities reinforces control over clarity. Assert dominance first, verify later. That mindset, coupled with a lack of accountability, is a recipe for constitutional violations. In Angela's case, it wasn't just bad policing. It was costly. The city paid $2.4 million to resolve a situation that could have been diffused in 30 seconds with a license plate check. There are lessons here, practical ones. For citizens, know your rights. Ask, am I being detained? If the answer is no, you are free to leave. Document everything. Stay calm, even when you are being wronged. It should not be your burden, but in moments like these, clarity is protection. For officers, slow down, verify, de-escalate. Authority is not weakened by humility, it is strengthened by precision. A badge should not be a shield from consequences, it should be a commitment to constitutional boundaries. For departments, training is not optional. Data must be tracked not just about crime, but about stops, use of force complaints. Early intervention systems are not luxuries, they are necessities. If Officer Madsen had been removed after his second complaint, Angela might have remained just a teacher, not a national headline. Finally, for everyone watching, this wasn't about shouting, or running, or breaking laws. Angela Monroe stood in silence and was still labeled suspicious. She was not profiled for what she did, but for what she represented. If we accept that as normal, then rights are conditional. Then justice is negotiable. We must not. This story should never have happened. But now that it has, it must be used. In classrooms, in courtrooms, in roll call briefings, in training manuals, so that the next time someone stands beside their car and an officer approaches, the first instinct will be to ask a question, not issue a command. To check a plate, not reach for cuffs. To see a person, not a problem. Because justice begins not in the courtroom, but in the moment someone chooses to look again.